Despite the energy crisis in Ukraine, Zelensky continued to provoke the Kremlin. And the other day, the Ukrainian armed forces again launched missile strike using ATACMS system. You already know that this time Taganrog was hit by 6 American ballistic missiles, and many are expecting a response from the Russian side, after which millions of Ukrainians may be left without electricity, water and heating.
Мы сейчас живем в режиме ожидания. Если не будет исполнено то заявление, которое сказал Министерство обороны, нам будет просто позор. Мы просто балаболы, мы просто люди, которые не отвечают за свои слова. Смотрите, сколько раз нам говорили о красных линиях, сколько раз нам говорили о центрах принятия решений.
In any case, the Russian Defense Ministry stated that strikes by Western long-range weapons will not go unanswered, and there will be a response. And Peskov supplemented the Defense Ministry statement and said that the response will follow then and any way that is deemed appropriate. And tonight, Russia struck airfield in Kyiv where Ukrainian pilots are trained, as well as hangars and warehouses. In addition, a drone manufacturing and helicopter repair plant in the suburbs of Borispol was hit. But the main target of today's missile strike on Ukraine was energy facilities. In total, according to Zelensky, 93 missiles and 200 drones were launched. And Zelensky achieved that in the winter, many Ukrainians were left without heat and electricity. At the same time, the Bloomberg publication believes that this is not the response that Moscow promised, and in the coming days, Russia will strike the territory of Ukraine with an Oreshnik missile. By the way, yesterday Trump said that the most dangerous situation at the moment is Biden's decision to strike ATACMS missiles deep into Russia, and he promised to save Americans from a nuclear apocalypse.
I could just say that the economy, I believe, is going to be very strong. We do have to solve some problems. We have wars going on that we didn't have. We have a lot of things happening that we didn't have that would have never happened. They would have never happened, but now they have happened. And I want to get them solved. We have to get them solved because ultimately the power of weaponry today is the biggest threat we have, in my opinion.
We will soon find out what Trump will start with after the inauguration. But the US has already left Kyiv without Lend-Lease. And as it turned out, the US House of Representatives did not include in the military budget for 2025 either new trenches to Ukraine or an extension of the Lend-Lease program. And this news was reported by the Ukrainian ambassador to the US, Oksana Markarova. I don't understand what kind of Lend-Lease Markarova is talking about, if instead of it Ukraine has been receiving aid all this year, for which it will be necessary to pay with Ukrainians' resources. But apparently it is easier for Ukrainians to perceive information this way. By the way, the future director of the FBI, Kash Patel, intends to investigate Zelensky's activities, and Patel is interested in how the office of the president used American taxpayers' money and whether Zelensky invented false threats to Western security for the sake of new trenches from Washington.
If Zelensky's going to go out there and beg the world for more money and come to the U.S. and sit in the well of our Congress and say, we want more money, and Zelensky is out there, he went on the world stage and said, Russia fired a rocket into Poland, which would literally be an act of war. Well, it turned out that Russia fired no such rocket. It turned out that the rocket came from the Ukraine and was fired into Poland.
The false threats what Patel is talking about were invented by Zelensky together with the US Congress. That is why Zelensky will soon be replaced, so that all these sins can be blamed on him. But until that happens, Zelensky loses more than one settlement, especially since the Donetsk direction is collapsing whatever it can, and territories are quickly being transferred under the control of Russia. And now we will look at what is happening on the Donetsk front, and what changes have occurred over the past 24 hours. So, on the Ugledar front, the most active actions are concentrated in the areas of Razdolne and Novy Kamar, where the Ukrainian armed forces continue to counterattack. Near Ravnopol, Russian assault units are moving in the direction of high-altitude position in the area of Niskushnaya, but over the past 24 hours no changes have been noted in the contact line, and we will move on to the Urspenovsky section, where attempts to dislodge the Ukrainian armed forces from Anovka continues. And on the map you can see that now there are only a few kilometers left in the narrow section, and the pocket of Ukrainian armed forces defense in Urspenovka, Veselый Gай and Anovka is closing. So, judging by the pace of military actions, the Ukrainian armed forces will soon withdraw from Urspenovka as well as from the entire Kurakhovsky direction, and many have begun to make predictions about when this will happen. For example, former SBU Colonel Starikov said that the Ukrainian armed forces will begin to retreat by the end of the year.
Можно прогнозировать, что мы отойдем, наши подразделения отойдут из Курахова и ну, в общем, со всего Кураховского направления отойдут на запад. Это можно прогнозировать, это произойдет неделю, я так думаю, до конца.
Many understand that if the Ukrainian garrison do not leave Urspenovka and Kurakhova, they will be surrounded. In Kurakhova itself, Russian forces are advancing along the central streets, and the situation for the Ukrainian armed forces is as critical. Now the Pokrovsk direction. In this area, Russian forces have advanced in the southern part of Solntsevka, occupied the settlement of Zara, and southwest of Pokrovsk, advancing from Novotroitskaya to the west. In the Shevchenka, the cleansing continues, and Russian troops are advancing towards the village of Bilgika. Plus, movement has been noted along the railway line from Novy Trud to Chunishina, and this will isolate the garrison of the Armed Forces of Ukraine in the settlements of Zelena and Dachinskaya, where Russian troops were already consolidated their positions on the southern outskirts. By the way, the distance from Chunishina to Pokrovsk is less than 2 kilometers, and apparently Russian troops will put pressure on Pokrovsk from the south. Well, and beyond Pokrovsk, as you know, there is already the Dnipropetrovsk region. But the most interesting thing is that there are no fortifications in the Dnipropetrovsk region, although several millions of dollars have already been spent there on a non-existent fortification. And the British publication The Financial Times writes that from November 2023 to November 2024, the Kyiv authorities spent about $7 million on the construction of defense line in the Dnipropetrovsk region, but during this time nothing was built, and work on the construction of defense began only 2 months ago. And this is despite the fact that the Russian army is located 15 kilometers from the border with the Dnipropetrovsk region. By the way, in Pokrovsk, gas will be turned off from December 13th. And this means that the city is already being prepared for surrender. On this I say goodbye to you until the next issue. Subscribe to the channel, put a like and a rocket, this will help bring video to the top, and more people will be able to see it. And I'm also waiting for your comments. I wish you all the best. Bye everyone.